बैरी, तुम यहाँ कैसे? क्या तुमने कोई
Julius, Duncan, Sinead, Rudberger, hi!
Frank Frankfurter wakes up to a great morning, greeted by the citizens of Foodtopia, who are grateful for his efforts in bringing peace to all foods. It quickly turns into a musical performance to which everyone celebrates him as the town's hero. Suddenly, Barry and Sammy Bagel Jr. tell him that their experiment worked and that they have brought back Frank's love interest, Brenda Bunsen. When he embraces her, Brenda shockingly turns to mush, and Frank wakes up from the nightmare. Jack claims that although he isn't a dream expert, he believes that it might symbolize that he's still sad about Brenda's death. Frank quickly changes the topic and goes outside on top of Frank. Unlike his dream, everyone loathes Frank for the changes he made while they struggle to withstand the scorching heat. He opens the walk-in fridge and tells them that it is time for the next batch. Frank explains that although not everyone is pleased by it, he just wanted everyone to get equal time in the fridge. Outside, Sammy worries about the gloomy mood and approaches Frank to let him perform his one bagel show, The Greatest Doughman. He explains that people need entertainment, but Frank argues that they need to focus on working for a better tomorrow. Frank calls out Peaches when he stands in line for the freezer and explains that they can't put cans in fridges yet. Peaches is displeased, but Frank argues that this is only temporary. He claims that once his cool zone expansion plan, which he calls the Cool World, is complete, he reassures them that there will be fridges for all. Later, Frank leads the workers to pull a fridge over a high hill. Ice-T has grown tired of working with the human, whom he refers to as their former oppressors, and instigates a coup by dropping the rope. Once everyone stopped pulling, the weight of the fridge pulled Jack, and he rolled down to the bottom. Frank confronts them, to which Ice-T claims that it slipped. Barry tries to calm them down and sends them off to rest and do their own thing. Later, Barry witnesses some unruly food vandalizing the wall after rumors that Frank and Jack are screwing each other. Barry tries to reason with them, but they argue that they are displeased with Frank for forcing them to work. Barry explains that Frank has changed things for the better, but they say that it was at the cost of their freedom. That night, Barry meets with Frank and brings the issue to him, claiming that this isn't working and that they need a change. Sammy states that he's tired of having no creative freedom and is unable to perform. Barry claims that everyone is unhappy, tired of him ruling over them on top of Jack. Frank argues that he has no choice, as he has a target on his back, and claims that they need Jack to enforce the rules. He claims that integrating humans into their society will only breed more contempt. After their meeting with Frank, Barry and Sammy witness Sinead and Duncan sneaking around. They follow them into an alley, but are quickly discovered when Sammy makes a noise. Barry chases after them and eventually catches up. They question the couple about the map they found on them, but the couple refuses to answer. Sinead claims that they aren't the only ones displeased with Frank's regime and declares that this is bigger than they think. In a plan to infiltrate the coup, Barry and Sammy impersonate Sinead and Duncan and show up at the meeting. Julius goes over their plan, which surprises Barry and Sammy as they are plotting to kill Frank and Jack. Barry tries to get them to see reason, but they wouldn't listen and insist on going through with the plan. Iced-T becomes suspicious of Barry and Sammy's unusual behavior and exposes them. Barry runs back to Frank after discovering the others are planning to kill him and Jack. Barry convinces Frank and Jack to escape town, fearing for their life. They made it through the gate, but when they turned around, Barry and Sammy locked the gates behind them. Barry explains that this was the only way to prevent the others from killing them. Frank orders Jack to climb the gate, but it's too high for him. Suddenly, Barry and Sammy were kicked out of town too, and Sinead explains that they were part of his regime. Julius worries, claiming that if they were willing to double-cross their friend, how could they trust him? Following their exile from Foodtopia, Frank remains in denial, while Barry is equally shocked to have been kicked out. Frank still can't believe everyone turned on him after he led the revolution that gave them their freedoms. He is still furious at Barry for deceiving them, but he argues that he was doing what is best for everyone. Sammy tries to calm them down, but Jack convinces them to take this opportunity to visit his hometown or other places that have other foods. On the road, Jack starts to slow down, burned out from all that walking under the scorching heat. Barry jumps into his pants and starts pulling on his balls to force himself to continue running from all that adrenaline. Jack asks for something to drink, thirsty from all that running. He spots a cactus in the middle of the road and tries to drink its prickly juice. He was surprised to find it dried up and its insides filled with spiders. Continuing their journey, Jack recognizes the tunnel that leads back to his hometown. Worried the tunnel seemed unstable, Barry insisted that Jack do the walking on his own while they hid in the safety of his pockets. During that time, Frank seized the opportunity to make amends with Barry. Barry is furious, claiming that they should be the ones angry at him for being dragged into his mess. Making it halfway through the tunnel, everything seemed okay until Sammy sneezed and caused a cave-in. Jack barely makes it outside before the entire tunnel collapses. Jack gleefully runs into town, excited to have returned home, but is shocked to find the place abandoned. Barry finds signs of a struggle and follows the trail to a forest. When Jack starts acting weird, Frank blames Barry for not bringing Jack's bath salts. Barry argues that they got exiled because of him after pushing them all too far. He tried to tell him, but Frank never listens and brushes him off. Frank blames him for not doing a good job as the head of security, but Barry argues that they were going to assassinate him and convinces them to exile him instead, sparing his life. While they were arguing, a horde of wild berries appeared before them. Frank is excited to have found more food like them and tries to speak on behalf of the group. Suddenly, the wild berries grow hostile and chase after them. Barry tries to stand up to them, but the wild berries ignore him and chase only Jack. As the wild berries overwhelm him with their numbers, Barry jumps back into his pants and controls Jack to escape from the angry mob. As a furious horde chases them to the edge of the cliff, Barry suggests jumping to the other side. With the mob closing in on them, Barry rides Jack and forces him to take the giant leap off the cliff. Although they managed to make it to the other side, they came rolling down the hill after making the jump. When Frank starts talking about Brenda, Barry punches him out of nowhere, claiming that he isn't the only one to have lost someone. Sammy gets them to stop, but they wouldn't give up when Jack suddenly sees lights in a town from a distance. Having found a still thriving city in the middle of nowhere, Frank, Barry, and Sammy decide to check the place out. Jack wanted to join them, but he couldn't stand up, still feeling the pain in his back. Barry feels terrible for Jack, who still believes that food would treat him with anything but open hostility. Sammy claims that bringing the last human would make a horrible first impression. Frank tries to reason with him calmly, but Jack couldn't understand him as the bath salts were wearing off. Arriving in the city, they were shocked to find a civilized world with food everywhere. They sneak into the town and are pleasantly surprised to find that food is thriving there. Sammy was immediately drawn to the place, especially when he saw food artistically free to express themselves. Suddenly, the sky turns dark and a storm is fast approaching. Sammy suggests warning them, worried that they'd quickly turn into mush. Barry advises against it, afraid that they'd blow their cover, but Frank insists on saving as many as they can. They flip the traffic cone where they were hiding, but when they were about to warn everyone of the rain, an announcement was broadcast, and a skylight popped up to cover the food-filled streets. Frank and his friends were amazed at how advanced and prepared the city was for anything. Sammy followed a couple of popcorns and was quickly drawn to a theater when he saw one. Barry tries to stop him, but Frank also wanders around. Barry pulls Frank to the side and claims that nobody smiles that much unless they're hiding something, but Frank argues that he's only being paranoid. Barry runs to rescue Dijon, a mustard princess, when a group of foods ambushes her, but is surprised to discover that she can handle them on her own. Dijon explains that this was just a training exercise. Frank tries to communicate with the locals, but when they see him, they suddenly go into a trance, and the same thing happens to Barry and Sammy, who are creeped out by their odd behavior. Cornered, Barry suggests commandeering an unmanned vehicle to escape. As they nearly run over baby Food crossing the street, they turn the car and crash into a dumpster, sending them flying when the car seat ejects. As they came around, they were surprised to see the Food hoist them up and start cheering for them. They then carry them to the large tower in the middle of the city. They quickly receive a hero's welcome and are greeted by Nutritia, who appears to recognize them. Nutritia claims they are famous for starting the revolution that liberated them. Nutritia states that she is one of the many council members who represent each food group in town to ensure everyone has a voice. She explains that they quickly learned that having a single leader with a single vision only breeds contempt, which made Frank feel guilty. Nutritia claims that none of this would have been possible without him. She tells them they could stay, but Barry grows cautious and explains that they will have to think it over. Frank interrupts and claims that they are staying. Suddenly, a horn goes off, which Nutritia explains is their ceremonial horn. They went outside and were surprised to find Jack wheeled into the city, tied up to a scooter. Barry and Sammy feel terrible, but they worry that the others would ask them to leave if they knew they were human sympathizers. Initially hesitant, Frank convinces Barry and Sammy to help Jack, who is taken to a warehouse. They quickly break inside when they hear Jack screaming, horrified to imagine what they are doing to him. They were surprised to find Jack being bathed. What's more surprising is when Barry discovered that there are more humans in the next room. Following their shocking discovery, Nutritia explains that the reason their town is so advanced is that they found a way to domesticate humans. They witness them firsthand, much like Barry does to Jack. Using humans as their manual labor force, the Food then uses them to carry the newly bought fridges to the fridge row, where everyone is given access to them anytime they want. Nutritia explains that the new fridges are for them, but when Barry suggests rooming together, Frank looks hesitant. Nutritia claims they could use some separation from each other and states that they have enough fridges for them. Nutritia then gives them a tour of the place and explains that not only did the humans' physical abilities improve their town, but their specialized knowledge from their past lives does as well. Their humans have taught them how to drive cars, practice medicine, and even read. Frank claims that he too had the same vision of using humans, but the others were strongly against it. She claims that she is surprised anyone would stigmatize the use of humans. Thanks to humans, they can meet their basic needs, allowing them to focus on self-care and overall happiness. Nutritia claims that she has arranged a meeting for Sammy with their top filmmaker, Francis Ford Capicola. Sammy is excited when he hears about it and claims he will be pitching his story. Meanwhile, she tells Frank that he will be a great addition to their council, to which he gratefully accepts. As for Barry, Nutritia suggests he find his calling on his own, worried that any suggestion she gives will only be met with a strong dose of skepticism. Sammy is excited to meet Francis, who directed the movie Lambshank that he saw earlier. He quickly pitches his story, but Francis explains that it is not what they do there. He claims to remake famous movies by humans, replacing the characters with food, which makes it a big hit. Sammy argues that these movies are about humans, not about them. Francis decides to give Sammy a shot at telling his own story. Barry struggles to belong in New Foodland, who tried the Barbershop Quartet, the ham radios, and even Zumba. While walking around town, his attention is quickly drawn towards Dijon training the young recruits in hand-to-hand combat. After fixing his back, Jack received a tracksuit from the Food and was surprised to find other humans. He immediately makes a fool of himself in front of the others and is quickly smitten by Jill. Suddenly, Jack follows the other humans who are called in for training. Turns out that Dijon leads the recruits and plans on breaking in Jack. Barry volunteers to try to impress Dijon, who is surprised to ride him bareback. Dijon and Jill pair up against Barry and Jack to compete on a training course. Refusing to give up, Barry rides Jack hard, trying to catch up to Dijon and Jill, who is leading. Dijon was impressed that Barry could keep up with her, but she insisted on testing how he fares in actual combat. Meanwhile, Frank joins the council, but when Nutritia realizes that he can't read, she enrolls him at school to work on it. Thanks to his determination, he graduates with flying colors while Sammy finishes his movie. Just when Sammy thought the critics didn't like his film because they remained quiet, Francis explains that this is better than a standing ovation. He claims that the others are quiet because it made them jealous of his movie. Barry spends his time training with Dijon, with whom he later becomes romantically involved. Jack and Jill also grow close to each other, sharing a connection over food. That night, Barry joins Dijon for a fuel mission. When they drive past the gasoline station, Jack starts to wonder what they're doing. Arriving at some compound, the humans sneak around and move into position, awaiting Dijon's order. After giving the signal, the humans broke into the house and began grabbing the food to eat. Jack and Barry were stunned when they realized that fuel, in this case, meant food for the humans. Stunned by what they had just witnessed, Barry and Jack stood frozen as the others ate and gathered every food item in the area. While Jack is vomiting, a beer keg sneaks up from behind him and is about to shoot him when Dijon and Jill arrive and stop it. With Dijon's permission, Jill hands half of the Cadbury egg she found. At the council meeting, Frank suggests human-towed wagon rides, to which Nutritia claims would be a fun activity for all new Foodlandians. Frank was surprised that they agreed on his proposal, which he claims would have been great if Foodtopians weren't against it. Nutritia wonders what kind of food would reject his excellent ideas. Frank claims they have a wide variety at Foodtopia, like fruits, vegetables, meats, leafy greens, and even hearty grains. Sherman describes it as a lot of brain food. Frank states that he is done defending them, to which Nutritia claims that he is now one of them, a new Foodlandian. Following the horrific discovery, Barry quickly looks for Frank and Sammy and reveals the truth behind the fuel missions. He shows them the Cadbury egg that Jill gave him as proof to convince them. Frank and Sammy couldn't believe it, to which Barry claims that the whole city is built on the corpses of foods like them. Surprised that the council condones such a barbaric act, Frank storms back to the council to confront them about it. Sammy gets triggered when Frank claims that only he can change the hearts and minds of food. Intent to prove his movies have the same impact, Sammy focuses on finishing his film. Frank confronts the council, having learned of the truth, and is appalled at their not caring about the deaths of innocent foods like them. Nutritia claims that they too are disheartened by the deed, but this is what keeps their humans strong. She makes her case about how, if not for their humans, they would not be able to sustain power to Fridge Row, or how a food chemist is working on research to give them everlasting life. Sherman explains that they only feed what is necessary to the humans and nothing more. Nutritia claims that their approach is very deliberate and only meant to sustain their lives, not the humans. The humans feast on what they captured, to which Jack refuses to become part of. Jill tries to comfort him and wonders how he has been able to sustain himself. Jack embarrassingly explains that his particular diet is of human in nature, to which the others weren't bothered when they learned about it. When Frank returns, convinced to accept it by the council, Barry decides to take matters into his own hands. He meets with Dijon and confronts her about how she can do such a barbaric thing. Dijon argues that she fights so that others won't have to. Left with no choice, Barry sneaks to where they are keeping the humans and douses the place with gasoline. When he was about to light it up, he witnessed Jack and Jill having a moment together that he couldn't bring himself to carry out. The next day, Frank walks into town still bothered by what he discovered, and he decides to propose a different kind of diet for their humans. He storms into the meeting, but Nutritia asks him to wait until Sherman finishes with his proposal. Frank agreed and was reviewing the docket when he was shocked to discover that the next target for their fuel mission is Foodtopia. When Frank discovers that Foodtopia is the next target, he tries to convince the council otherwise, but they think he's joking. Nutritia claims that they thought he would be on board after how he described his old town. Frank argues that he was just bitter after they exiled him and claims that they don't deserve to die because of it. When they couldn't agree, they decided to put it to a vote, which resulted in a landslide victory against Frank. When he couldn't convince the council, Frank looked for Barry and revealed how New Foodland is planning on invading Foodtopia. Barry wonders how they knew about it, to which Frank admits that he was only venting out and not intending to become a target. Frank and Barry go to find Sammy, who refuses to join them, claiming that tonight was the premiere of his new movie. They try to convince him, but Sammy insists on staying. That night, Frank and Barry sneak to where the humans are being kept and try to convince Jack to return to warn Foodtopia. Jack refuses to go after how the food there treated him and wanted to kill him. When Frank insisted, Jack claimed that he only wanted him around because he could use him. Before they parted, they said their goodbyes. Frank claims that he will have no choice but to kill him if he ever sees him on the battlefield, to which Jack retorts that he will eat him otherwise. Frank dares him to do it, believing that he doesn't have the stomach for it. Bothered by his statement, Jack runs to the kitchen and starts shoving raw hot dogs down his throat. Frank and Barry steal a toy car and drive back to Foodtopia, where Dijon witnesses the theft. Dijon pilots Jill and intend to chase Frank and Barry, who deserted them, a crime punishable by death. Just when they thought they had a considerable head start, Dijon and Jill caught up to them. Worried they wouldn't be able to outrun her, they lure her into the forest where the wild berries live. The wild berries tried to overwhelm her with their numbers, but they stood no chance against Dijon and Jill. When that didn't work, they placed a dead cheese on the driver's seat to buy time while they ran back to Foodtopia on foot. Without cover, they quickly run and hide inside a pumpkin when vicious crows try to attack them. When Frank blames Jack for their situation, Barry criticizes him for how he treated Jack. Barry claims that there was truth to what he said about Frank using him or his feelings. He states that during the short time he was with Jack, he saw how hurt he was and how much he'd ask about him. Barry claims that he understands what Jack is going through, given his long-standing admiration for Frank. After being chosen for the council and separated, Barry had to grow up quickly without his guidance, a fact he never noticed. When Dijon finds them, they quickly roll the pumpkin towards the tunnel. After losing the crows chasing after them, they prepare for a daring escape. By combining vinegar and baking soda, they blow the cap to the ceiling, causing the tunnel to cave in and preventing Dijon and Jill from chasing after them. Meanwhile, on premiere night, Sammy's movie was a big hit, but he suddenly felt lonely without his best friends there. Suddenly, Nutritia grabs the mic from Sammy and informs everyone that Frank and Barry have deserted them to warn their old town about their upcoming fuel mission. Worried that they no longer have the element of surprise, Sherman claims that they will need to roll out their full arsenal at Foodtopia and declares that they are at war. Nutritia claims that the movie provided them with the foundation for the geographical layout of Foodtopia. As food lines up to get their weapons, the humans are loaded at the back of the truck, which then heads out to attack Foodtopia. En route to Foodtopia, Jack sees a herd of wild horses and imagines he and Jill are part of the pack, free to do whatever they want. When they arrive at the block tunnel, pilots board their human partners. With Barry missing, Jack is paired with the wild card Maverick, who is known to have ridden his last human so hard that he tried to escape and died. Jill wonders why Dijon paired Jack with Maverick, to which she explains that they needed pilots with an edge, and Maverick is the best of the best. Jill argues that Maverick has never been the same ever since he lost his wingman, Goose. Even when multiple system failures pop up on screen, Maverick ignores them and pushes Jack hard. Meanwhile, Frank and Barry sneak back into Foodtopia, only to find it abandoned with no food in sight. Frank wonders if they all died from lawlessness when suddenly they see them working together to pull a fridge back into town by themselves. Even Frank and Barry were so impressed that they applauded, which surprised the others who had thought they were back in town after being exiled. Sinead explains that they had no leader and that everyone pitched in. They explain how they designated the spirit of a food as their ethos, to which both were surprised to discover it was a mural of Brenda. Rutabaga claims that she embodies equality, bravery, and compassion. Melon Gibson claims that Brenda brought out the best in them as opposed to Frank, who only brought out the worst in them, making them constantly angry. Wondering why they came back, Barry explains that an army of food, along with their domesticated humans, is set to attack Foodtopia. Unfortunately, they don't believe them, but instead of killing them, they decided to show mercy. They tied them up and threw them outside. Worried that they might be telling the truth, they decided to put more food on the lookout. The new Foodlandians arrive on Foodtopia and conveniently find Frank and Barry tied up. They quickly set up base outside to prepare for their attack. Nutritia takes one final attempt to convince Frank to join them, explaining that those missions keep their town alive and enlightened. Frank refuses, claiming that he'd rather have the food to live than know how to read. Unable to convince him, they carry out the mission. Their humans tried to climb the gate, but were surprised to find it empty. Dijon worries that they know they are coming, so the food suddenly ambushes and fends them off. Nutritia was surprised to find that Foodtopia was organized, contrary to Frank's claims that it wasn't. Worried they have no way of getting past the gates, Nutritia asks Frank for another way into town. Frank denies there is one, but Nutritia argues that according to Sammy's movie, he is seen sneaking in and out of town to visit Jack. When they refuse to answer, Nutritia asks Jill to carry on with torturing them. Jill starts with dunking them upside down in egg wash. When it wasn't enough to make them talk, Jill drips hot oil on Frank, to which he screams in excruciating pain. When Dijon was about to torture Barry, she couldn't bring herself to do it, and drips it on Frank again. Unable to swallow what she is doing, Dijon walks out. Nutritia claims they are doing this to ensure they don't die on the battlefield and asks her to pick a side. When Jill returns to the horse trailer, Jack tries to convince her to escape with him. He claims that they should be free to do whatever they want and, hopefully, one day have kids of their own. Jill claims that she's had a good life and states that Dijon treats her well. She explains that she needs Dijon, for without her, she is just pathetic old Jill. Jack claims that it's not the food in her pants that makes her who she is. He states that she doesn't need Dijon and he doesn't need Frank. They just need each other. But Jill argues that freedom isn't an option. When Frank and Barry refuse to cooperate with them, the council agrees to kill them as they are of no use to them anymore. They put Frank, Barry, and Sammy inside a microwave to await their sentence when Rutabaga and the others carry out a daring rescue. When Maverick rides Jack to carry out their execution, Rutabaga commandeers the horse trailer where the other humans are being held. Dijon jumps on board and detaches the trailer where the humans are being held, while Frank and the others safely return to Foodtopia. With war in the air, the residents of Foodtopia barricade the gate with everything they have, mobilizing every able-bodied body they have. Barry hands out weapons to everyone while the parents secure their children in lunch boxes. As they go over their plan, Barry explains that although they have more food than they can handle, they need to focus more on the humans the enemy is using. Rutabaga suggests killing the humans, but Barry proposes commandeering them instead, to which the idea repulses the others. Barry explains that he isn't asking them to live with the humans, but to weaponize them against the overwhelming numbers of the enemy. Julia steps up to lead the infiltration team. When Barry states they need a distraction, Sammy offers his help, claiming to have picked up nifty tricks during his time in production. Before the humans headed out, Jack made them his famous Jack balls. Jill convinces the others to eat them, feeling terrible for Jack, who spent the night preparing them. Suddenly, the door opens, and Maverick takes him to meet with the council. Nutritia blackmails Jack into revealing the secret entrance, threatening his relationship with Jill. Waiting for the enemy to arrive, they suddenly notice movement in front of the gate. A car then speeds up and rams into the gate. Barry leads the charge to take them out, but is surprised to find no one was driving it. Out of nowhere, they hear screams from the back, to which the humans have breached inside using the secret entrance Jack told them. Chaos ensues as humans start rounding them up, and enemy food joins the battle. The council informs them that they have agreed to rename their town square after the one who killed Frank. Frank seeks out Jack, intent on making amends for how they left off, but the other humans are now chasing him as well. Frank skillfully escapes capture, but when they corner him at a park, Barry pulls him into his hiding spot. When Barry discovers that the humans are after Frank, he coordinates with Sammy and uses Frank as bait to lure them into a trap. Sammy coordinates with the others and lures the humans into a toy store. Duncan and Ice-T then swiftly move around the humans and spray paint their windshields to temporarily blind them. When one of them falls on the couch, potatoes hiding in it tie him up, to which Sinead pries the cockpit open and throws its pilot. When they open the cockpit, Barry gives the signal to launch their allies to wrestle control. When Dijon sees the others get taken out, she jumps in and catches Julius, to which she then sucks him dry. Maverick opens his cockpit, prompting Barry to jump at him and commandeer Jack to fight against the Dijon and Jill pair. Dijon bested Barry and was about to finish him off, but Jill begged her to stop, worried for Jack's life. When she thought Dijon would listen, she told her that she was nothing more than a weapon to her. Suddenly, all humans come to a stop after getting rumblings in their stomachs. Jack claims that when Jill told him there was no escape, he found one. Turns out, he gave them a hearty dose of laxatives in the Jack balls he made them eat before they went out. He claims that this way, no one has to die, whether human or food. Unable to hold it in, the humans flushed out the pilots from their cockpits. With no time to lose, Jack uses this brief chance to confess his feelings for Jill. Determined to claim their freedom, Jack tells the other humans to make a run for the recreational vehicle. Worried they'd lose their humans, Nutritia orders everyone to stop them. But they were already too late, and they locked themselves inside. Unable to find the keys, Jill claims she can hotwire the vehicle, but then a helicopter suddenly swoops in and takes them away. Dijon remains furious with Barry, continuing to stab him with her sword. Barry refuses to fight and makes her realize the cost of war. She throws her weapon and carries the injured Barry. Meanwhile, Frank is determined to make amends with Jack. When he can't reach him, he tries writing on paper. When the helicopter flies away, he launches himself up in a potato gun and tries to show Jack what he wrote. Nutritia grabs hold of Frank's leg, blaming him for everything. Frank worries that Nutritia won't stop, so he pastes the letter on the window and lets go. Nutritia dies from the fall with her skull cracked open, but a bag of flower cushions Frank's fall. After flying some distance, the trailer is lowered down to where Jack and the others meet General Owens. Owens reassures them that they are safe and that the rations they have can't hurt them. It appears that Owens is aware of Jack, whom he explains they have been monitoring via satellite. He explains that when the food revolution broke out, the army was woefully unprepared. While they were watching the skies for UFOs and Chinese weather balloons, little did they realize that the real enemy was in their bakeries, ice cream parlors, and their very own fridges. Owens claims the tide is finally turning, and with their new weapon, they will take out every food on the planet. Thank you for watching.